Hello, my name is Jessica Botaw, and this is
Kelly Zimmerman.
And we are both dietitians at the Hines VA. And today we're going to bring you a couple of more recipes. We wanted to highlight an ingredient that was both budget friendly and an easy way to sneak in some extra fiber and protein into some recipes you might not expect. So today we're going to be highlighting black beans. So we're going to start off today with a black bean salsa recipe that Kelly's going to take us through. So for this recipe, you're going to need a 15-ounce can of no salt added black beans, drained and rinsed, 2 cups of corn kernels. You can use fresh, frozen, or canned, 2 large tomatoes seeded and diced, so about 3 cups worth, 1 medium onion chopped, so about 1 cup worth, a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh cilantro, 1 jalapeno pepper that is seeded and minced, 1 lime that is juiced, so about 2 tablespoons worth, plus more to taste if you desire, 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, plus more to taste if desired.
So let's get started on our recipe. So as Jessica mentioned when she was reviewing the ingredients, there are some ingredients that we do need to have kind of prepped and ready to go before we get started with the recipe. So anytime you're doing a recipe, it's really good to review the list of ingredients, what the steps are of the recipe, and make sure you have all of your ingredients set and ready to go. It's this concept called mise en place, which is French for put in place, and it just makes the whole cooking process much more efficient and really enjoyable, when you have everything ready to go. So we are going to start then by preparing some of our ingredients. I will say we do have already in our bowl here our black beans, and then next we're going to start with chopping some of our vegetables. So we'll start with our 2 large tomatoes. So with any kind of fruit, vegetable, whatever you need to do, whatever you're cutting, you want to try and make it flat. Anything flat on the surface is going to be a bit more stable to cut with. So in this case, the bottom of the tomato here is pretty flat already. I'm just going to put it down and kind of just slice through the middle here. And then I'm going to cut it down the middle again. And you can kind of just scoop out some of the seeds here if you would like. Some like to keep the seeds in their salsas. Others find it just adds maybe a little too much wateriness. So take those out. And this is a nice one because I know later in the summer here, if you grow any of these at home, you'll start to see tomatoes in your garden. And so this could be a nice one to use up some garden produce as well if you need to. So sometimes with tomatoes, because the skin is kind of almost a little slippery, it can be helpful to lay the skin down flat and then cut through the inside of the tomato versus the other way around. So once you've chopped up your tomatoes, we're going to go ahead and just add those to the bowl with our beans. And then up next we have our onion. So we're going to go ahead and chop that up. Thank you. So with an onion, kind of a tip for cutting it is you want to keep this, kind of root portion intact when you're cutting. And again, we want to make it flat. So we're going to cut off this other bottom end here. So from there, we're going to then cut through the center of the onion, still keeping part of this root portion intact. We can then take the skin off of the outer layer. Onion is a really great way just to add extra flavor to dishes. There's different types of onions and they all have kind of their own different flavors. This is just a white onion, but another good source of those vitamins and minerals. So with the onion, what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold our claw grip, we've got our knife, and we're just gonna cut these kind of narrow, parallel cuts towards the end of the root of the onion, but not all the way up to it. What that's doing is it's helping keep the onion intact while we're cutting. And it's also holding in the element of the onion that can cause our eyes to water. So if you have that problem with cutting onions, keeping this intact as much as you can might be helpful. So from there, we're going to turn the onion the other way, and we're just going to cut down up to the root. And you can get as close to the root as you're comfortable doing so. And then we have just kind of a nice little diced onion. So we'll go ahead and add that to our bowl as well.
And you'll notice we're keeping a bowl with all the discarded parts of the vegetables because this is great to throw in your compost later, or you can boil it and make a nice vegetable stock. So if you're trying to reduce food waste, great little thing to actually hold on to these.
So up next is our jalapeno. So one tip that I do have with jalapenos or any hot peppers is you might want to consider wearing gloves while you're cutting them. They contain, once you cut them open, they contain something called capsaicin, and that can make your skin just kind of irritated, burn a little bit. So again, we're going to start by making it flat. So we're going to cut off just the top here, stand it up, and then kind of just cut through the center here. So here we're just going to cut out the seeds. So the seeds is really what adds a lot of the spice in a jalapeno. We still get some of the spice as well from the rest. But we're going to take those seeds out, and again, this is where, if you don't have gloves, try to avoid touching this center portion if you can. Just scoop out those center pieces. And then we're going to go ahead and just dice these up. So very similar to the tomato, they have kind of a smooth outer side, so that can make it sometimes a little slippery. So it can help to place it down like this. However, if you don't have gloves, you might want to have it the other way just to minimize touching the inside as much as possible. We'll just get some of the seeds off. Right. And we'll just go ahead and cut these again into some strips. And then we'll go ahead and add those to our mix as well. All right, then next we want to make sure we have our cilantro chopped and ready to go. So, thank you. So this recipe calls for 1/4 cup of cilantro, chopped cilantro. So what I find helpful to do with this and any herbs is you kind of want to get it into almost like a little roll. Kind of try to keep it all together. With some of these softer herbs, you don't need to worry about getting off a lot of the stems. You can take off some if you would like, but you don't need to worry about it as much. And then from there, what I like to do is I kind of just pile it all together, take the tip of the knife, place it on the cutting board and the palm of your hand there, and just kind of rock back and forth just to get that nice chopped. All right, so we'll see how much we've got there. All right, okay, it's just about 1/4, so we'll add that. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my gloves off, and then we can start adding in just the other ingredients here. So we've got, let's add in our corn. So this is just a frozen bag of corn that I let thaw in the fridge, but you can also use canned corn, you can use fresh corn. Add that to the mix. All right, and then we're gonna add in 1 lime. Kind of cut this down the center here. And sometimes I just like to score it a little bit before I squeeze it in. Just kind of squeeze that over the mixture. And then next we've got a tablespoon of red wine vinegar. If you don't have red wine vinegar, I think a white wine vinegar or even apple cider vinegar would be a nice alternative for this recipe. We're just gonna add in a tablespoon of that. And then we're gonna add in a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin. And then we'll do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper or more to taste. All right. So we've got all our ingredients ready to go for our salsa, and then really we just want to mix it up. So this is a recipe where letting it sit for a little bit, ideally a couple hours, can help really just the flavors build a little bit more before serving. But this would also be, this would be great with, you could do some like homemade tortilla chips, but you could also put this on top of like a chicken or a fish dish, or really just eat it plain on its own. A lot of different flavors coming from all the different vegetables in this dish. All right, there we have our black bean and corn salsa.